Welcome to Business Beyond the Mic, where we join Carly Van Heerden, CEO and founder of We Edit Podcasts. Together, let's uncover the art of podcasting.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. I'm your host, Carly Van Heerden. Today on the show, we welcome Kathy Caprino. Kathy is an international career and leadership coach, writer, speaker, and educator dedicated to helping professional women build rewarding, impactful careers of significance. A former corporate VP, she is also a trained therapist, seasoned executive coach, senior Forbes contributor, top media source, and the author of 2 top-rated books aimed at supporting the advancement of women in business, Breakdown, Breakthrough, and her latest, The Most Powerful You. Through her many incredible resources, along with her Finding Brave podcast, Kathy has been named a top career coach and leadership voice in the US and globally. Her ultimate mission is to support a Finding Brave movement that empowers professionals to close their power gaps and rise to reach their highest and most thrilling potential. During our conversation, Kathy walks us through her journey with Finding Brave and why pushing the boundaries to create a safe space for her guests to be vulnerable has led to the most incredible breakthroughs for her podcast. She also reminds us that even though metrics are important for understanding the impact of your episodes, it shouldn't be what shapes you as a podcaster. From there, we dig into Kathy's process for curating just the right guest for your show and how to pivot when your vetting process goes astray. She also points out the importance of understanding the power of your network and why it is crucial to adapt the right mindset for creating a true partnership when monetizing your podcast. This is an incredibly valuable conversation, and I can't wait to get into it. Kathy, welcome to Business Beyond the Mic. It is such an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, this has been a long time coming. I've been so looking forward to this conversation. You have an incredible background, such an inspiring story, and I just feel like it's going to be such a rich episode. So why don't you kick us off by starting to share a bit more about yourself, your business, your brand, and of course, your podcast.
I'd love to. Thank you. All right. So a little bit of context. It's a bit of a story, but I feel it's important for people to kind of understand the journey. So briefly, I had an 18-year corporate career in marketing and publishing. And, some of the years were great, I have to be honest. But as I hit 40, I faced a lot of bumps, and those bumps turned into full-blown crises. Sexual harassment, gender bias, discrimination, toxic colleagues, narcissistic bosses, chronic illness, and infection of the trachea of all things every 3 months for 4 years. Not being in the fabric of my children's lives, and they're 26 and 29 now. But worse than all of that was waking up towards the end of that career saying, is this what I'm really going to be doing with my life? Is this it? Because it really lacked meaning for me, meaning and contributive purpose, but I didn't know what to do. And I tried some different things, but nothing moved me forward. So what happened was, after 9/11, I was laid off in a brutal way after just moving to a house, bigger house, where the leader of that organization had said, buy the biggest house you can. You have a long career here. And I snapped, Carly, I just snapped. I said, I cannot return to this life. I can't do it. But I had no idea what to do. So I'm sitting in my therapist's office, and he said, literally, this is one of the most instrumental sentences I've ever heard, questions. He said, I know from where you sit, this looks like the worst crisis you've ever faced. But from where I sit, it's the first moment you can choose who you want to be in the world. Now, who do you want to be? And when you're stuck, you don't know the answer to that, but I blurted out, I want to be you. I want to help people, not hurt people and be hurt. And that sent me on a 20-year journey. He said, I think you'd make a great therapist. I became a marriage and family therapist. And that training and experience in working with clients with rape, incest, pedophilia, suicidality, drug addiction, attempted murder. One of my clients was in jail for attempted murder. It was so life-changing, but that wasn't the end point. That wasn't the destination. Then I found coaching, and in particular, career and leadership coaching for women. And so that has been my 16-year passion, I've worked with thousands of women across 6 continents, helping them rise and thrive and build more confidence and more positive power and build the careers they long for and that they deserve. So that's that. And the journey, Finding Brave, I love the name. I love saying the name. But interesting, later we'll talk about the first name was Brave Up. And someone trademarked it 2 months before I was going to use it. But a friend of mine said, I was in Greece at the time doing a retreat, and she said, what about Finding Brave? And I said, that is it, because we don't brave up. We find it. Mm-hmm. We find it wherever we can find brave. Yes. So that's the very long story here for the reason behind the work and the podcast.
Oh, no, I love everything that you shared there. And then the purpose behind it all is, like I said, so rich. You went from something that was almost unsatisfying to finding this treasure of connection with people, helping people, and lifting them up to be able to find those things like the brave things that they venture into life with. And it's just, wow, so inspiring, Kathy.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you share that background for us. And now when you're thinking of all this variety and change that happened in your life, how did that launching your podcast marry into what you were already doing? Or how did you use it as a tool for your business?
Love that question. I had a podcast with someone else, Mo Fall, another coach, for a year. And we both went our separate ways, amicably. And I had an inkling that I wanted to use this podcast as a way to learn. And I wanted to speak with top movers and shakers and experts. And many of them are authors and best-selling authors, because that's a hero's journey to write a book. I've written 2. It ain't easy. But I wanted this to be my own master's class in life, business, leadership, careers, personal growth. And so I really use every episode. I really ask the questions I'm desperate to learn from. And I think that works for the particular listeners we have, because I don't really hold back. Like, I will ask the questions I'm most curious about. And sometimes it shows my ignorance about the topic. It shows a bias that I didn't even know I had. But that's where I love to go, to be brave, to learn. Yeah. And hopefully it helps listeners learn.
Well, honestly, I always say that if you take that student mindset, no one's going to tell you, hey, you can't be here learning these things. Everybody's gracious when you are out there to learn, to find the experience, to foster that curiosity and see where it leads you. Because if you're stuck in somewhere, what better way to get out of that than to find your curiosity and learn something new?
I really feel that.
Yeah.
This is not to brag, but lots of the guests have said that was the best interview I've ever had. And when I ask them why, what they often say is there was such curiosity and we created a space together where I think they felt they could go deep as well. We can't always go deep in life. For instance, I'm doing a lot of training now in the corporate world. And there are lines that folks don't want us to cross. And I'm pushing those boundaries because I think being in a safe place to be vulnerable, to admit what you don't know, to admit what you're not comfortable with, that's where the growth is. If we're tiptoeing around and just saying the same old things, what growth is there?
Yeah. No. There isn't any.
We just stay stuck.
Right. But you get stuck in your own mind, because as soon as you say something that is a bit more vulnerable, you think, oh, should I have shared that? Oh, what are they going to think about me? And all these things hold us back, that don't allow us to be open and dig deep, where actually that's what people want to hear about. That's where they feel the least alone, because they hear your story and your vulnerability, and it just helps open everybody else up who's listening to you as well. But yeah, admitting that you don't know some things is always good. And on that topic, was there something that you wish you knew before you launched your podcast? Some guidance that you wish you had before setting out on this journey?
It's interesting in thinking about this. That first podcast with Mo, it was great to do it with a partner because it feels more safe. And what I didn't know, she sometimes knew more and vice versa. But then going out on my own and really taking it in a direction that I was passionate about. I think the area that, eludes me is production. Audio production, which is where you and We Edit Podcasts come in and help me so much. And I did have another podcast editor who was amazing as well. But the audio editing as well as show notes, I see a lot of podcasts. I listen to several. A lot of podcast hosts choose not to have extensive notes. I'm a writer, so I want the notes there. I want to give highlights. I want to give a full look at the guest. But I've learned that can be quite labor intensive. So I think the biggest thing I probably wasn't prepared for was the labor intensity of doing it the way I want to do it.
Yeah, not holding
back.
So
you get help. Mm-hmm. Help is essential. Good, reliable, quick, responsive help that gets you. If you have a team that just wants to do it their way, but that clashes with your authentic style, well, that's not going to work,
Yeah. And I mean, especially for you as a writer, you have your own style already carved right out. It's not something that you're just exploring right now. It's, what you want and what you want to give your listeners as well. So that's pertinent, because I agree with you. A lot of other podcasters might not be on their top of their list to have extensive show notes or, provide anything else for the listener. But yeah, if that's the core of who you are, you can't stray from it.
I'd love to throw in a tip here. Could I?
Yeah, go for it.
Very early on, we created, and I might have borrowed it from someone else whose podcast I was on, a guest prep sheet where I ask, what is the bio you want? What are the key 3 takeaways that you want from this discussion? What are the questions you want to ask me? And that prep form is so incredibly useful. Now, because I'm an interviewer and, I have a blog on Forbes, so I love to interview and I love to craft the questions. I don't necessarily follow those questions, but why to the T? But what I love about them is it shows me what they're passionate about talking about. So that really helps with the show notes, because the show note editors look at that and hopefully it dovetails very well what the audio is saying. So off the bat, we're ahead of the game in terms of creating quality notes.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it helps you see who they like to present themselves as, like in their bio that they prefer. It's not something that you're scrounging out somewhere and deciding who they are without you knowing the base of who they are yet. And they can provide that for you, which is,
that's right.
Yeah, amazing.
Sometimes I have to say they don't brag enough. And I'm like, can I rewrite your bio? Can I use this one? And I write it from things I see on LinkedIn and their website. And they're like, thanks.
Yeah.
That was better than the one I gave you.
Oh my gosh. I do that all the time with my content creator, because she's just my director and she knows all things words. That's what she lives for, right?
So words. That's a great
that's how she always says it. And I'm just like, I can draft this up, but would you take a look at this? And she just makes it better. I'm like, yes, that's what I was going for. You got it.
How great to have someone like that on your team.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. When you're thinking of your podcast, what kind of benefits were surprising to you when you went down this journey, and how did it make you feel like successful with what you were putting out there to your listeners?
Look, I get teary-eyed thinking of it. Isn't that the biggest benefit for me? Is the learning plus the relationships. I'm at 260 odd episodes. So of course, not everyone do I become the best friends with, but I've built, or what has emerged from that one conversation has been the foundation of some amazing friendships and collaboration and support. And I don't think I anticipated that when I started 5 years ago. And that is the biggest gift. I think you're also asking, am I right? How do I know it's doing what I hope, reaching an
Yes.
audience? So it's interesting. I've had a lot of hard lessons on not following vanity metrics. Let me share a little. When you write a book, for instance, your first time, sometimes you're obsessed about the Amazon ratings. Some of my friends write books and they don't even look. And I'm like, bravo to you. But my first book was 2008. I'm obsessively looking at this second book, The Most Powerful You, which came out in 2020. I look just because it is one metric, right? How many have sold? What's it ranking on in terms of list? So with the podcast, I'm not obsessively looking at the rankings, but I do look, and I'm absolutely thrilled that it's in the top 1.5% of over 3 million podcasts. And it's
amazing.
regularly, this is interesting, it regularly appears in the top 100 Apple Career Podcasts, but often in other countries.
Wow.
Russia, China, a lot of other countries, a lot of European countries.
Yeah.
Which I find really interesting. So sometimes if it's popping in a certain country, I'll go back and try to understand what about that conversation or that guest made it really pop to number 3 in that in Apple Career Podcast in that country. So I'm fascinated by that. Of course, I look at downloads, but I look at that more in terms of when I want to do regular roundups of the most popular episodes. And sometimes they're not what I would have expected, the ones that have been downloaded the most. But of course, sometimes that's because the guest has a huge following.
Right.
So it's not necessarily the organic reach. It's that guest has 1 million followers on Instagram. So I find the whole thing very interesting as research and as data, but I don't tend to be overly shaped by metrics.
Yeah.
I want to do what I want to do. I want to learn what I want to learn. And usually that takes the podcast where it needs to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible because like you mentioned, you're almost to 300 episodes and you've interviewed all these incredible guests. How do you then structure those interviews, those curious questions to make sure it still stays within what you're set out to do? Or is it just, this is, you do what you want to do with your podcast and it seems to work all around?
What an interesting question. I think I'm understanding it. Part of it is who I interview. So, I'm fortunate. I'm connected with some of the top PR firms in business books, leadership books, and I'm in that circle. And I do, as I said, have an affinity in speaking with authors because they've codified their teaching. And that's truly very, very difficult. So thankfully, I truly am pitched, I do not exaggerate, about 100 times a day, either via email or via LinkedIn, because I have a very big following there. So it's a little overwhelming, but there are partners in the PR world who I really trust. When they send me a pitch, I read it. Many of the others are so way off. So already I know that there's how many categories of, am I touching on 100 in careers, personal growth. And because I was a therapist, there's a lot of personal growth topics I feel comfortable talking about. I don't bring on people that I know literally nothing about the field or the field isn't in my swim lane at all. So that's the first thing. The second thing is if they've written a book or, they have a TED Talk that has 2 million views, I watch that material or read what I can of their book or look at their posts. And immediately I have questions. I have, even before I'm looking at their guest prep sheet, I'm like, it's interesting that they talk about power that way. And I think that kind of mind, we all have a different way we process information, but I've always been that very organized. My thoughts are like an outline. So if I listen to your podcast, right away, I've got question 1A, B, B1, that's how my mind goes. So, that part's easy for me, I have to say. What I want to ask based on what they share,
Yeah, but it makes it easy when you know that they are an expert in their field. And when you ask them, it's going to be research things that they've put time and effort and their whole passion into. So it's going to be incredible content that you get out of it, especially with your great questions that you always have.
Thank you. I mean, not always do I agree with what they're saying. Of course, that's a good conversation, but the people I choose, I know enough about. They're respectful, and I'm going to ask it in a respectful way. I might say something like, I really need to understand what you just said. The way it lands for me is this. Tell me where I'm not getting it. So, I do think as a host, I think our top rule should be that we're respectful and it's a mutually beneficial conversation. Not that we're ripping someone down. Or also, I've listened to shows where there is no challenging going on. And I don't mean disrespectful challenging, but wow, can you tell me more about what you mean? I don't understand. And I find those less interesting than when there's a real deep dive into it.
Yeah, no, we had an incredible conversation with the ladies from And She Spoke, and they mentioned, just viewing people on Twitter and everywhere and how people are saying things that are provoking other people. Not necessarily to start a fight, but if you're not saying those quiet parts out loud, how are you ever going to stimulate interesting conversations, things that bring people in, that get the discussion going and, flowing from all of that? And it's just, it's an interesting mindset, especially for me. I'm very introverted, so I'm always kind of hesitant to go for these things, to ask the tough questions, but I'm often thinking them. So it's not that you're not thinking the questions.
Well, I would suggest most powerful you, I'd say, starting this minute, ask the question that makes you a little uncomfortable to ask.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm going to have to practice that.
You have one?
No, not on the top.
I'm here to answer it.
Oh, you're here to answer it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I should start thinking of saying those things out loud and just finding my brave, right?
I think that would make it so fascinating. No, your podcast is fascinating, but I think that's what people respond to. Yeah. They're thinking that same thing. And you're giving them a great opportunity because they wish they could be at the mic asking it. Right? Yeah.
But I love what you said, that there is a mutual respect. And I think also just knowing that whoever you invite on, they have a respect for your audience and they know that you've nurtured them and created this space for them that's safe, and that they don't often step over it in an irrespectful way, which is nice to know among the podcast community, or just the people that you find that you connect with, to have on as guests, which, yeah.
And truthfully, I mean, it hasn't happened often, but we do know how to edit, right? Mm-hmm. So if something is said that I feel is disrespectful or not the energy I need in this show, I will edit it.
Yeah.
Remove. I think I usually go back and say, I'm going to be removing that statement. I hope that works for you. Yeah. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, I'm glad you are. That, when you're in a space of just communing with someone, sometimes stuff comes out that you think, wow, that wasn't my best self.
Right.
I'd like to say that differently.
Wow. Yeah, that's something to ponder on, especially if you are, riffing off of each other and trying to get into these deep conversations, being respectful of what even the listener might feel when they hear certain things, or, what it brings up for them. You don't know. So
that's
that
right.
Respect is three-way actually in the end, right?
It is. You're right.
Wow, Kathy. But after all this time, I listened to that incredible episode of yours where you're recapping your 5 years as a podcast host or with Finding Brave, and just the amount of information you were able to put into one episode and just sum it up so beautifully was amazing. And
thank you for that.
Yeah. So I'm just so curious, what is next for your podcast? What are your dreams and your hopes for the future of it?
I love this question. I'm having so much fun with it, and it's fulfilling so many of the hopes and expectations. And the one that could use some growth is the monetization. Now, the interesting thing is I get more speaking gigs, which I adore, and more invitations to do webinars and workshops with organizations for leadership conferences, for women's groups. I'm so grateful for that. And with it reaching the level it has, I would love to more directly monetize. And I've tried certain ways. One thing I would say, I guess my own website, kathycaprino.com, has high domain, what's the term? Domain reach. So when people apparently type in women's career coach, I'm the number one result on Google after the ads. So
high ranking.
pitched
Yeah.
a high ranking, right? There's a term, domain. I'll think of it later. But what happens then is I'm pitched so much. Can we post an article? Can we? No, because I'm careful about the content. And same with the podcast. But I'm really looking for great ways where I can become an affiliate like I just have with your team,
Yes.
We Edit Podcast. And of course, I'm only going to do that. I never lie, on the show, or I try never lie anywhere. And I always want to come from a place of speaking truth and having it be really in alignment with everything the show is doing. So being an affiliate for We Edit Podcast is thrilling to me because your team has been so great to work with and really fulfills and exceeds expectations. And I would love more opportunities. So anybody listening, where it really is a partnership and a collaboration, and I believe in the brand or I believe in the service, and it really fits with the audience that is listening. That would be next. That would be a goal.
Yes. Well, I look forward to seeing what you come up with. There are so many great ways to do it and tons of resources out there. So we can definitely list a lot of those in the show notes for everybody.
Great.
Yeah. And have more conversations about it because, the options are
important.
out there.
Yes. It's important.
It's hard work and you're doing a great job. You're getting reach. You're impacting so many lives. Should all come full circle. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Now, before we get into our fun little quick fire questions, is there any other advice or a tip that you leave our listeners with today regarding podcasting?
I didn't really think of this before, but I would say, there's so many millions of podcasts and many of them don't last, right? I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I would say if you're interested in getting in front of the mic and doing this, there's a low barrier to entry, really. I mean, if you have Zoom or StreamYard or, other platforms, do it. However, just recognize it's a commitment. It's just like writing a blog or writing a book. It is a deep commitment if you want it to be a product that makes a difference. So I'd suggest do it, but vet the experience first. Talk to people who are doing it. Listen to your podcast, because it's not for the faint of heart. In that you need to be brave. You need to be brave. You need to be committed. You need to invest. So do it if all of those endeavors don't scare you. But it is a life-changing experience, I think.
No,
for so many.
Yes, I agree with you. The life-changing part is something that you don't even realize it's going to happen until you're in it and it's happening. But it's so true. Like 90% of people don't even publish more than 3 episodes and then they give up.
Is that the number now? Yeah.
So,
And consistency, I know you've talked about, consistency is important.
Yeah.
If you want a following, you can't disappear after the second episode and have it be 3 months. So look into it, but do it if your heart tells you to.
Yeah.
There it is.
Do it if your heart tells you to. Follow your heart. I love that.
Follow your heart.
Well, now we're going to jump into this quick questions. You can say whatever pops to your mind. You can expand on it or not. It's up to you. So the first one is, how has podcasting changed the way you do business or life?
I think it's helped me understand even more that it's the people in your network that help, that we can't do anything of great magnitude and importance and meaning without help from others. And I think a podcast is a perfect emblem of that. But it's helped me realize and helped me develop even more collaborators and partners and supporters that help me every day.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think too, people don't realize that everybody has a network. Everybody has a starting point. So don't underestimate your network and use it to your advantage.
But can I add this? I love LinkedIn. To me, it's the big cocktail party in the sky. 930 million members. Why wouldn't you be on it? But actually, Carly, many people are hiding there. And there would be the place that I'd have you start. And I have a ton of resources. I know you'll link to them.
Yes.
KathyCaprino.com/LinkedIn support. A lot of free articles and training, but that's a place to start. It's a beautiful place. Join the cocktail party. Imagine you could have 1,000 people in the same room and you can talk to them and give to them, give and take. It's just beautiful. So don't hide. Start to build that network. That's a life-changing experience for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah. I see where you guys come into agreement. My content director loves LinkedIn too. It's her favorite place to be, sharing words.
I have to connect with her. Yes. You'll tell me later who she is and we'll have fun.
Yes.
Love it so much.
Well, next on the list is, what is your favorite tools as a podcaster or like non-negotiable investment?
I think we touched on that, but a great production team, because there's intros, outros, there's music. It's not, for me anyway, great production team, great show notes, as we said. And I use Zoom. I adore Zoom, frankly. And, Slack is another tool. Yes. That is, I have 2 teammates, one in Pakistan, one in the US, and we live and breathe by Slack. And I didn't really know it till another team member shared it with me. I love it. So the basic tools, anything else, a wonderful microphone. We were talking about, so many people have said, wow, you sound great on that, Kathy. So that's something you don't want to skimp on. The equipment you need to sound and look good on a consistent basis, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah. No, you sound great on your mic. Because your voice is incredible to listen to. It's like a nice journey that I'm on.
Thank you.
So to switch gears a bit here, was there any big podcasting fails or blunders that you had, or big lessons that you had to learn on this journey?
Thinking about this, I've done some things that have really scared me, like the first time when I was invited, would you like your own blog on Forbes? I was very scared, and I was scared of failing. What if I say the wrong thing? What if, so scared. But that's been 10 years now. And, it's the first time I ever did therapy in front of a team that was evaluating me for my master's. I mean, I literally thought I'm going to either have a heart attack or pass out, but I'm not going to have to get through this hour. Those are the things that scare me. I never felt that way about the podcast because I felt, well, I can stop it if something's terrible. But a smaller kind of fail has been once in a while I have on a guest. So how do I want to put this? I love it when it's a collaborative, respectful, mutual give and take. Once in a while, it's someone, a narcissistic person who really just wants to talk about themselves and doesn't view the podcast host as a human, but views it more as a way to get more views. or sales.
Yeah.
And I've had just a few of those, but those, the minute I get on screen with them, I can feel that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like a failure because that, I used to study energy healing. As a therapist, you're feeling energy. As a coach, you're feeling energy. Everything is energy.
Yeah.
So if I've had a guest that has an energy that I think is damaging or narcissistic, that can feel like a failure to me. So the answer to that is vet the guest.
Yeah.
Vet the guest differently, more deeply.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. And it comes back to that part of respecting your audience or being protective of your audience, right? It's
100%.
This is your place. This is what you've created. And you're inviting people into that space to share and be generous and not self-serving.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's really right.
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
I never really thought about that. That was an amazing question there. It's true. It's a safe space that I want to protect for people listening. And I don't want them to feel that that space has been violated because that's my job for that not to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, taking it up one more level, if money or time were not a factor, what would be next for your podcast?
Wow. It wouldn't be about the guests. It wouldn't be about production. It would be maybe more ads or monetization. Not more ads, because I'm happy. Of course, we would love more people to listen, but that's happening, So finding great tools to monetize and investing in, generating more revenue. But see, I can constantly go back to, it's almost like I resist the revenue piece alone. No, Kathy, don't do that. But it's really like, how can I expand the reach, which monetization would help me do?
Right. Yes.
I think that's the point.
It'll be monetization as a tool rather than
a tool,
a
not
means
an end.
Yes.
That's an end in and of itself. Although revenue is critical. Hey. We run businesses. So bring on the revenue. But again, it can't be a clash. I think a clash with my values. I had 18 years of that in corporate life. And so I'm ever so careful that any partnership has to feel right.
Right.
But why can't that happen?
Hey,
in a greater degree, starting this minute.
Starting this minute, right now.
Right this minute.
Oh, wow. Kathy, I am just blown away by everything that you've shared. I think it's been such a nice space for me to be into and for my listeners. And thank you for providing all of your helpful thoughts and just, overall views of everything that your podcast journey has led you to. So just thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for your really probing questions that make me think and made me appreciate the Finding Brave journey even more. Thank you. And thank you for founding a We Edit podcast. It's a beautiful, great organization. And the energy that comes from them is really so positive. So bravo to you.
Thanks, Kathy.
And thank you for having me.
Been a pleasure. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We will see you next time.